And just the sheer fact that Snapchat was kind of blowing up and nobody was really measuring that, I started Delmondo kind of on the premise that we would, work with kind of creators and influencers and look for interesting opportunities. But underneath that was really powered by this fact that I knew that there was way, way more interesting data about who's watching videos across these different social platforms as they were rising.
This is Beyond Influential with Brittany Crystal. Join Brittany as she chats with today's thought leaders about the power of influence, how it's developed, and how they get us to consume both on and offline. Here's your host, Brittany Crystal.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Beyond Influential. Today I'm here with Nick Cicero. Nick is the CEO and co-founder of Delmondo, an analytics and audience insights platform that helps publishers, creators, and brands produce, measure, and monetize their social videos. Nick has also worked on a number of projects with some of the world's largest brands, from Sports Illustrated to Viacom, to AT&T, Univision, Conde Nast, Oprah, the list goes on. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. It's exciting. You have a podcast now. Awesome.
Well, thank you for being here. Nick, I'm really excited for this episode because Nick has a ton of information on pretty much every platform that this audience would be interested in. So, Nick, can you just tell us a little bit about your background and your career evolution to get to Delmondo?
Yeah, sure. So I've been really more of a musician, I guess you could say, all my life. A very creative person. But I went to college for music education, actually, and was really interested in creating a lot of, I guess you could say, content on the internet. And when I was 17, I had started kind of a music production company and was using like forums and message boards to land different gigs. I did some cool things. I ended up like writing music for American Idol and Dog the Bounty Hunter. A couple seconds here got used, a couple seconds there, but it was really awesome. And then I think that I saw that you could meet a lot of different people and do business on the web, but also do creative business. And that was super cool. And so as I kind of came out of school and kind of going to school for music, I was certainly like working on more traditional music type classes and learning different instruments. But obviously social was happening. I was one of the first kind of Facebook classes, and it was really changing a lot of things, MySpace and Facebook. And I met a lot of people. I got interested in some development and ended up kind of coding a lot of those flashy MySpace backgrounds and custom MySpace pages for people that I wanted to make music for. And just like did a lot of different types of loose entrepreneurial things inside of the music industry in all different capacities while I was going to school. And then I think, kind of probably my senior year in college, somebody gave me or I was actually buying back books. I was working for a book buying company. And I bought back one of my friend's books and I looked at it and it just looked really interesting. And it was about advertising. And I read through it. And at the end, it was basically like, hey, there's somebody who's doing this type of fun stuff that I've basically thought was just, side gigs and side money myself in my dorm room. I never was worried about being like a superstar producer. I just was worried about that for the fun, but I knew that I could make money with like, commercials and all of these other properties. And I read this book and basically opened my eyes to what jobs were in business, quote unquote, that weren't boring. I took economics in college and got a C. It was not very, run a multi-million-dollar business now, got a C in economics. It's very funny, but it was not that, and it wasn't as interesting to me, or it wasn't set up in the right way. But this whole idea of like marketing and advertising combined with what I was doing like in social, which wasn't really called that at the time. It was just, Facebook and blogging and being on the internet. And so I was like, oh, this is something really cool. So I ended up going to Syracuse to Newhouse and getting a master's in advertising, which pretty much, I guess you could say, was like my education into the whole world, the proper world of marketing and advertising and the way that companies are kind of structured, both in like agencies and corporations. And because I was really already entrenched in all of this like new socially type stuff, it was just to me, like the merging of it was very natural anyways. So yeah, worked in a couple ad agencies and then moved to San Francisco and worked at a software company called Livefire. And we did a lot of really cool stuff, curating content and doing commenting all over the web, and did a lot of fun projects there. I got to go on tour with Oprah, as you kind of mentioned earlier. That was super neat. And really was seeing this evolution of media. And, early Facebook was just posts and posts and posts, and then it evolved to more visual content. And, about 3 years ago now, when I was leaving my last company, Expion, that was doing more traditional, I guess, first wave social analytics, kind of reporting on posts and engagement type data. We saw, I had some friends at Syracuse who all of a sudden were super into this new platform called Snapchat. And they came to us and they said, hey, we know that you can help, people who are celebrities or other, we know that you can help connect us to brands. Would you help me out as like a friend? And I'm like, sure. What do you, he's like, well, I think I'm big on Snapchat and I don't really know what that means, but let me take a look. And that's kind of when I realized that there's this huge gap in video and audience measurement that most of these analytics companies weren't focusing on, even the companies that I had worked at. And so that kind of combined with the ability to go in and kind of hustle and make money by, kind of creating content and creating things for people as I had done with music and artists, that was like, there's definitely something here. And just the sheer fact that Snapchat was kind of blowing up and nobody was really measuring that. I started Delmondo kind of on the premise that we would, work with kind of creators and influencers and look for interesting opportunities. But underneath that was really powered by this fact that I knew that there was way, way more interesting data about who's watching videos across these different social platforms as they were rising. And so ultimately that's, kind of how the company got started and then where we've come to today, where we really are kind of focused on measuring and monetizing all of this great video and social content that, the world's biggest companies are trying to buy and sell, but also the world's greatest creators and top influencers and celebrities too. So that's a pretty long-winded journey from Nick's high school to here.
So the master's in advertising, did you even think that was necessary? Did you think it was necessary at the time?
Well, I was a music major, so I didn't think that anybody would give me a job, and I wasn't even sure like what to apply for, right? And I mean, I'd say that I didn't know it, but when I saw that, and I was a senior. It was definitely like I think it was October of my senior year, and I wasn't really sure. And I read this book, and I was like, oh man, this is like somebody went to school. If somebody went to school for all of the beats and the music and the commercials and stuff that I've been doing online for fun as, my side hustle, if somebody were like to have gone to college for this, maybe this is it. And Syracuse was listed in the back of the book as one of the top ad programs in the country, where it's like, hey, these are schools that you should go to. And I'm from Syracuse, so born and raised in Syracuse. And actually, funny enough, I worked in, over the summer, my dad is in, we're a construction family. So I worked on a, concrete crew every summer in college. And for the past 2 years, I actually tested all of the concrete in this brand new house building. And when I saw that, I'm like, hey, I wanted to go to Syracuse for music because they have a pretty good music school as well. And I'm like, this would be awesome. They have a great, Newhouse. Everybody in Syracuse kind of knows the prestige of Newhouse as well. And so, yeah, like I applied and they called me up and they had no idea, what to do with me, I think, because, I was a music major. But then when I told them all this like really cool stuff that I had done myself, and I was like, well, these 5 ad agencies have actually hired me to make music for their commercials. And I think that opened their eyes and I got in there and obviously, at that same time when I went into school at Newhouse, I just knew that there was going to be a different set of people, that it was obviously a different tier of school than my undergrad. It was, and obviously a graduate program, I think. And it really just started off in general was just thinking that nobody was going to give me a job without having, with that music degree, or it would not be a job that I was necessarily trying to get with, the big aspirations that I felt like I had. So yeah, and I went in there and, my first semester, an assignment was to sign up for Twitter and to tweet. And I was like, I've been tweeting for the last 2 years, and I ended up getting in trouble in grad school. They thought I was texting, but I was just tweeting. And then they couldn't get everybody else to tweet. And here they were like yelling at me for doing it.
So then how did you balance the idea of wanting to be an entrepreneur with going to school and entering the let's say in quotes, normal job market? Because you were obviously looking to get a normal job when you left, but it seems like you were entrepreneurial too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had jobs. I mean, I had a job. I had a job at a newspaper. I got fired after 9 days. That was cool. That did not go well. And then I got a job. And for the most part, I was at ad agencies, and it was cool because at this time, pretty much coming out, this was, I'm 30, so this was 2000 and basically 2010 was the summer that we were all done graduating from Syracuse, and I went right into 9 days at a newspaper getting fired, but then got a job at an ad agency that went much better. But really, like that, the job description was for a strategist. And when I walked in, they're like, "What do you know about this and that?" And I was like, "Okay, cool. I can make a marketing plan." And all of the more traditional, obviously you learned that they didn't teach the digital stuff at Newhouse as much as they taught all of the fundamentals. And I knew that I could go get a job and be a creative at an ad agency and do just fine and make, print ads all day long if I needed to come up with interesting strategies that were, visually inspiring, that told messages. So I guess it's like, okay, great. I have an advertising degree. I'm creative. I have my own, unique view. And when I first walked in, they basically were like, "Do you know Facebook?" I'm like, "Do I know Facebook? Let me tell you." And honestly, for me, one of the first jobs that I had was, running social for Extreme Makeover Home Edition and Subway and a bunch of these other accounts, and then doing web analytics for people because we were building, or the company was doing a lot of like transactional commerce type data for some of the customers, or, when you have, Subway, not everybody just does the consumer marketing for Subway, which we did social stuff. But then there's also this whole other level where they had a deal where they were researching all these locations for, where to put new franchises. So you have to pull like analytics about who's coming to the website every day and looking up this stuff. So I was building a lot of like reporting type tools as well. And I guess I got into it because I was always into like the computer side of when I was making beats and producing. I was also really into, like I said, I would get into meet a big rapper by doing his MySpace page, or I would interview somebody on. I had like a really janky blog at one time, and I only probably wrote a couple articles on it, but I reached out to a ton of people, or I did something. So I was always kind of like making connections and doing different things, and so it wasn't that far off that I was doing some more computery type marketing roles here. But yeah, like when I first got out of school, I was still hardcore making beats, and basically like I wake up, I'd go to work, I'd come, and because it's all kind of building together, I was super interested in like this marketing and this social media, where it was going. And my hook was not just that, this was before there was, before somebody like, and I know that we both know Gary really, really well, Gary Vaynerchuk, but it's like before there was a want to have the knowledge that he kind of shares with people and his experiences. Before that type of stuff, you only had like, a couple, you had people like Tony Robbins and things like that were kind of like the market for business knowledge and content. It was very nascent. It was very much like marketing, advertising people that are like, "Oh shit, we're in this position that we don't know with this social stuff." And so many people were like that. And so I met people that were like, at real companies, and there wasn't such there weren't so many people on, I know it sounds silly, but like there weren't so many people on Twitter that were talking about the types of stuff that we talk about today. There's not the type of coverage that and I feel old saying that, but there really wasn't. And so instead of like saying, "Hey, this is that," I was doing some more of the marketing and things, but I would just go home and make beats again all day long and get into the social and then market my music and the things that I was doing with people. And, that led me to meeting, Sci-Hi the Prince, one of Kanye's artists. And for him, it was basically doing my day job for Subway, just doing it at night now for Sci-Hi, and watching his accounts and helping to make plans for some of that, and meeting new people. And once again, and then I'd just be like, "Okay, cool, go home and bang out the beats." Eventually I kind of realized that I was I was able to make far more money by doing the extra things like working with these artists, coming up with launch strategies, or we worked with some really cool brands on some tours, like Heineken tours with Sci-Hi, where he went all over the Southeast, and we created content. And this was, no branded content tag, no hashtag ad. This was long before anybody like thought about that type of stuff. And we just like did a concert series, and it was just natural. We're like, hey, we're going to do a concert series with Heineken, and we're going to make a bunch of video. And of course we're going to shout out Heineken because that's who paid for it. It's so I think that probably towards the end of my time in Florida at these ad agencies, I kind of realized that I love making music, and that is my hook, like my personality. That kind of makes me who I am, and it lets I work with all different types of people as a result of that, and I also get the ability to kind of bring, I don't know, academic knowledge and business knowledge and structure into some of those environments too. I'm a big fan of the media industry in general. I think on the whole, it kind of obviously realized that, hey, there's, you can have a lot of fun and make a lot of money by doing this type of stuff too. And you don't have to worry about selling your beats, and you can just now do it for fun whenever you want. And, I probably now have a better opportunity to have a hit record than I did 10 years ago, and I don't even do anything. So I would say that, from access point of view, right, I think that I still get to do what I like to do. I still get to talk about it. I still get to be creative, and I get to make money and help other people make money by doing it. And obviously now I'm still a builder. And so, making beats is really just programming anyways. It's like programming. You do that. You program a beat machine just like you program, software. And so what we're doing today with like building analytics and doing things with, being the first to do this type of Facebook Live video and transform, television type analytics into streaming video. But then go work with all these like big companies like, Red Bull, and, have Red Bull working. We did a ton of music streams with them over the summer where they streamed, Lollapalooza and ACL. And I'm getting to sit here while they're using and programming this awesome concert using data that we're collecting and gathering. And I'm like, this is what I wanted to do. And it doesn't matter if I'm the guy on the stage making the music or if I'm here like creating the experience that is the music. It was super cool.
So for Delmondo then, what was the process of actually building it out and developing the software and maybe getting funding, and how long did that entire process take?
Yeah, so we don't have a lot of funding. So, we've done really well by being very bootstrapped, but, over the course of the last 3 years, I would say the first 5 months of the company, it was, selling a lot of kind of content campaigns, creative campaigns. And then I hacked together a very ugly version of Snapchat's analytics and wired everything up kind of in a Google sheet, and it was enough to get by. And you could say like we were able to generate money because we were able to derive insights, and it wasn't like a software platform, right? It was like, hey, we know how to do these really great analytics, and we know how to make the great content for your brand with these influencers. And then as that started to take off and I got more customers, I actually got our first customers really quickly. And then I worked and I met, as I mentioned, with Brave Ventures, Jesse Redness and David Beck, who I knew for a while from previous lives, and obviously Gary, who I met and, I'd interviewed back at Vayner many years ago too. And, worked with them and talked through it with them. And it took probably 4 or 5 months before I was able to get just a little bit of, kind of incubation money. But then basically like use that money and put it away and use the money that we were continuing to make. And then, I had talked with I wasn't really sure how I was going to like build a tech team. I had talked with some development shops and, kind of after working with them, and I paid a little bit of money to have some like, I'm a big diagrammer or big design where, I design our platform now. And, so I'm visual in that sense where I'm like, I know what I want it to do. I know what it should be doing. I don't, this is what it's got to be. And I think that I worked with like these like design consultants and design shops who were extremely talented, but they wanted to go through a process and they had a business to run too, where they need to make money, and they've already done this kind of like testing experience where they're like, oh, well, we're a development business. And, maybe in the beginning we didn't know what we were doing and how we we're going to make money, but now we have a process. So I was essentially their customer, and I was like, this is fine and well, and maybe this is going to be cool, but this is going to be my product. I'm not just like I know what I need to do. I'm more technical than the average, non-technical co-founder, so to speak. And then, a mutual friend reintroduced me to, one of the guys that I went to high school, really have known forever. We swam on like the swim team together, played trumpet together when we were in elementary school. And we have, a love of the outdoors. And one of our, friends and teammates is like a dog trainer. And so he trains a lot of like hunting dogs and sport dogs and that type of stuff. And he has a pretty solid Instagram following in the sport dog space. And he was kind of creating, his name is Lone Duck Outfitters. So I'll give him a nice shout out on the podcast. And so he was kind of like creating this cool vest for dogs and, like a vest that doesn't poke your dog when you run into the woods and stuff like that. And we were talking, and he's like, hey, you should talk to Chris. I think that he's looking to do something else and he's just kind of hanging out, but he's really talented. And so I ended up started talking to Chris Ogden, who's our CTO and technical co-founder. And I was like, hey, this is what I have. This is kind of what I have. I mean, these guys are building stuff for me. And I feel like I know more than they're giving me credit for. And so he, agreed to come on as kind of like an advisor for a month or so and kind of just see what they were working on and give me a little bit more of like a friendly evaluation as a friend to let me know, so make sure I wasn't getting ripped off or anything with the money that I was spending. And sure enough, at the end of that month, he kind of was just like, man, Nick, I could build this in like 2 weeks, and I feel like I could do this whole thing a lot better. And by the way, like, have you ever heard of this guy, Casey Neistat? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I have. And he's like, yeah, like you guys are like doing stuff like that, right? Like you're basically trying to like measure all of these videos that he makes. And I'm like, exactly. And he's like, I love watching his videos, and Roman Atwood. And he just like starts rattling off all these like random, like, YouTubers that I didn't expect to hear him say that. And I wasn't like kiddie YouTubers or, like really, but more of like, what you'd expect, probably like a 25 to 34-year-old guy might be watching on YouTube, those types of personalities. But I was just surprised because, you don't expect everybody to know the whole ecosystem. This is now, a couple of years ago, certainly well before kind of like Casey's explosion for sure. And I was like, yeah. And so we hit it off about that. And he was like, okay, let's see what we can do. And we talked about it for about a month back and forth. And I was able to, close a couple more deals selling content, once again, selling influencer projects, right around the same time that I first met you guys doing the stuff with Gary, and basically like took all of that money, and he was able to quit his job and join Delmondo. We built a very nice looking prototype with the version, which was nice because he really can take all of like the design that I want to be able to do and implement it inside of there. And then we kind of released a really, really nice version of the analytics in the fall of 2015. And then last year, we grew and expanded. Then once again, we really just been self-funded ever since I took that first investment money and saved it and was able to let my CTO quit his job so he could join us full time. And that's how we built our development team. And now we've just grown and hired from there. So we have 9 people.
That's awesome. So you started with Snapchat and Facebook Live analytics. What are your current capabilities?
So today we actually measure all social content, videos and photos and posts pretty much on every platform. So Facebook video, Facebook Live, the new Facebook Watch shows, posts and links and things like that. Obviously on the live side, we provide some really awesome data, and we're a partner with Facebook. And we do some really, really unique things that kind of turn measurement on its head. So helping people sell more content on Facebook, like branded content, by understanding who's watching a particular type of video. So instead of just looking at like your follower count or the demographics of your audience, the way that like Facebook kind of shows it to you, that might have fake followers or might have people that are churned that aren't actually seeing some of your content and things like that. We're looking at different types and being able to help people go out and say like, hey, I'm a creator and I work and I do travel videos. And when I make videos about traveling to the South Pacific, I get these types of people that are actually watching this video. And so that helps, creators go out and get more money from the brands that they work with. But it also helps the brands make sure that they're working with people that are actually going to make the best use of the money and the time and the resources that they're going to invest too. So every platform, really, Instagram, and as I mentioned, we were one of the first to roll out Instagram stories because of our partnership as well. So we have some really, really cool reporting for your Instagram stories where you don't need to take screenshots. You don't need to worry about, am I going to be able to get all this data, or is this person going to be able to give this to me? Instagram video, photos, YouTube Live, Twitter video, first party. So if you have like a JW player or a video on your website, we can bring that in as well. And then there's just a lot of cool stuff that we do with that. So, we help you understand, how your audience is growing, that like the trending pieces of content, best times to publish the content, and how to really reach different types of audiences with different types of messages, and a lot of other elements.
Well, why are the platforms so open to working with you versus, other audience insight programs, and how are you guys different from what's on the market right now?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. One is I think that we have always taken the approach of co-selling with the platforms. And so I think that we bring a lot of value because we don't, we focus on the types of people. So like brands or publishers and media companies, people like Red Bull or TED or ABC News or NASCAR, or the influencers like Drew Binsky or Ross Smith that we do a lot of work with. The types of value that we bring to the platform is I think very pure value. And we're not I think that we're a good arbitrator and judge of talent as well. So I'm just as liable to go on Facebook Live or Twitter and kind of call somebody out that might, people might think is a popular account, or that's got a lot of followers, or it's got a lot of views, when it's not. And so I think that they really understand that we're trying to provide a lot of pure value back to people on both sides of the equation. So teaching people how to use the different tools from the platforms to make more money and drive more value. But then that ultimately brings value back to the platform because, they're obviously selling a ton of ad space on all of the in-between pieces of content that any creator or publisher is doing anyways. So we definitely straddle that line, but we do it in a way that's very positive and additive to both sides.
That makes sense. So I want to talk about brands a little bit. You've been in the brand game kind of a long time in, social media years. How has the attitude shifted towards social from the time you started to now?
Well, I think that more people are on the platforms, and I think that the platforms are faster to get to judgment. So, we went through a period where there are a lot of smaller distributed platforms where even like Facebook and Twitter wasn't even sure that they were going to be the big dogs, right? Mm-hmm. I distinctly remember when like Instagram, I remember like life before Instagram, and then I remember, life after Instagram. And I totally remember seeing this like giant shift. And then I remember, somebody saying like, hey, she called, I got to give credit to my friend because she totally called Instagram like a year and a half ago. And this was like probably 4 years ago. Right. And I was like, holy cow. And I think about that where I first started. So I think that when I go in and I talk to people, I think it's pretty clear that there have been waves of social. And so, all of those kind of anecdotes aside, I think that there are 3 clear waves of social. And the first wave was like text-based. So posts on Facebook, first wave Twitter, even just the blogging, the Reddits of the world, that type, even some of the Tumblr stuff early on, I think it probably skirts the line. But then you have the second wave, which is more visual. So all of a sudden everybody starts adding photos into their social content. And that's largely like attributed to, probably like an iPhone growth or an Android growth kind of coming out. And with that, and then we just have crossed in, like I said, just meaning, but probably in the past 2 years, we've switched over into the video world, and probably really harder in the last 18 months. But now we're in like the video phase. And that's really when Delmondo started. Was I saw this shift happening from this visual, photo-based, text-based to, oh man, bandwidth costs are coming down. Everybody's putting video inside of their apps. Everybody's going to YouTube and Netflix and watching video on their phones. All of these data providers are opening up and giving you more unlimited data, people are not as worried as much about getting their data plans zapped as they were before, because they're thinking about it more upfront. They're going to be watching more video. And obviously there's plenty of studies that have supported that too, but I just physically saw that. And for me, it was Snapchat that kind of snapped me out of it, no pun intended, but I was like, man, this is so unique. It's so much video. And so that's where kind of we are today. And, it's really the last big disruption too. And even podcasting is doing really well, having to come back, but and now even growing as well, because all of this media, the different formats of it are kind of becoming digitized, and video was that really last big disruptible thing. And now we're going through TV is, you're watching the breakdown of the TV industry. It's like literally like a slow car crash over the past year and a half, and will be for still the next year and a half. And so you can watch that break down. And then once that finally breaks down, then we have a free flowing, all media, all content type of system where it's cool. I can walk into my house and see Facebook videos, and then I can jump into my driverless car and plug into a podcast, and then go to my office and, the same podcast is ready to go. And we are moving to more of that like seamless content consumption environment where it's not necessarily tied to a platform, because all platforms are going to kind of be ubiquitous in the places where they think that people need to most reach them.
So what are most brands coming to you for then? And which platforms are they asking it for? Have you seen a huge change over the last even few months from Snapchat to brands asking for more Instagram-based stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's an obvious, like if we just look at a channel by channel, point-based type of approach, I think by far and large, the biggest shift that we've seen is the unsureness of Snapchat, or brands that were super into Snapchat, but regardless, a feeling around Snapchat. And I think when Instagram obviously came out, that's been a huge seismic shift that people have had. And even if they were starting to think about Snapchat, they've instantly dropped it and gone over to Instagram, and thought about that in a lot of different types of ways. So I think that that's probably the most marked shift that I've seen. But I think that just regularly in general is the breakdown of video. So we're getting more and more brands that are coming to us today than ever before. And obviously we have like traditional media clients like MTV and Viacom and NASCAR and TED, who, that's what they do. Their product is their media. And so they are by essence a media property. But, we have customers, like I said, like AT&T or others that come to us more than ever before. And they're saying, okay, we're creating our own content, or we're paying influencers or publishers to create this branded content for us. And it's all video driven. And that was what I saw, when I started it 3 years ago, and only really in the past 6 to 8 months has that started to make a real full blown shift. Now that people are realizing that all of the time that was being spent watching things on television is now being spent watching videos on your phone or on your laptop or tablets. And it's not, you're not watching the same type of content that you were watching on television. So they have way more choices than ever before to say like, oh, I want to work with this influencer because I think he's funny and he makes funny videos with his grandma. And clearly 20 million other people do too. And, that may be way more valuable than being on America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah. How are brands measuring success now then? Is it brand awareness? Is it conversions?
Yeah, I think it depends on your goal, like anything. So we've had clients that have been super interested in measuring the conversion of content on Instagram stories. Mm-hmm. And so we had a client this year that we were tracking an activation with a couple really great influencers on Instagram stories. And they drove around 100,000 conversions into an app environment from Instagram, which is huge. In just a 24-hour window. And for that, obviously, like, it's cool to know the views and all this other stuff, but to have 100,000 people take an action and go into a place where we can then see where those people are. And, ultimately for the app maker, they can now track that lifetime value of that person who comes in from Instagram stories. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So that's one way. I think that's always that's kind of the holy grail way. And app companies, I think you can track that conversion so much easier. But you do have other customers that are looking at it as a brand awareness play, or, a replacement of content creation, or this world of PR is kind of meshed, but, just the general idea of, hey, because everybody's watching content and because there are no barriers to making it and having our content look just like ESPN's content, why do we have to let ESPN make all of these videos about athletes when we're actually paying the athletes? Why can't we just make a video with them? And why can't we tell our own story? And so I think that the brands themselves, removed from like your media and publishing and creator and sport type entities, where once again the media is the product. For anybody who never thought that their brand was interesting before, I think that they're now starting to rethink that more than ever before, where it's like, oh well, nobody's really talking about what I do or the problems that I solve, and they may be talking about all this other stuff, but like, this is really interesting. Why can't I talk about what I'm doing? And so I think that that's like the cool part today, is the same way that like any influencer can go from nothing to create their own property with work and energy. A brand who's not traditionally thought of as somebody that would be a storyteller can become an amazing storyteller. And as you see, and Red Bull is, I think, people say Red Bull is a hard example for regular brands, but it was a 10-year process that they had to figure this out and realize that they spent all of this money in endorsements and this and that and acquisitions, to then finally turn around and realize, oh man, we are actually sitting on an ESPN library of content just that we've paid for. And so I think that for them, it's probably, they did it so early, but they had 10 years to look at a lot of stuff to come to these kind of ground-changing realizations. And it may still take time for other brands too, but I think that more and more people are understanding that, whether it's brand awareness, whether it's public relations, whether it is just more of data gathering, I think that the brands themselves understand that they need to make more content than ever before.
I know that this question is going to be specific to the brands that we're talking about, but are you seeing better conversions and engagements on certain platforms over others?
I'm not prepared to answer that off the top of my head. I think that Facebook is still probably, converting as a relative term, because I think it's a multi-touch approach. So I can use a really awesome site like Facebook to create a lot of content that allows me to gather a lot of data, or I can create something on my website that I can use social to use as a hook to get people back to my website, download a piece of content, and now maybe I could get more data about them. So I think that there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle today, depending on what you want to measure. I think that, in general, you can do a lot with Facebook because of the scale of it and the size of it. I think that from a mobile conversion standpoint, obviously, like organically, Instagram, if you want like an immediate, like, hey, get this and do this now. As I mentioned, 100,000 people went into an app after 24 hours. It's very impressive to be able to provide that type of like a volume of surge. So look at, the mobile platforms like Instagram, I think are great for people that are sticking in and around the mobile experience too. So I would say that, like, by far and large, Facebook and Instagram easily.
So do you help these brands on the campaign front too, with their creative and their strategy?
We used to, as I mentioned, we were doing a lot of like influencer campaigns and content campaigns, and we still, with NASCAR, we produce a lot of their Snapchat content, for example, this year with a small in-house, kind of creative studio. But relatively, we've kind of like transitioned, and we're focused once again on just like really revolutionizing the measurement of video and audiences. And, for us, it is, we can provide our knowledge, and I think that we have the DNA because, I joke that, we didn't come out of like the cornfields of Iowa, no offense to Iowa, and just like say like, hey, we got a great idea for analytics. I've spent the past 10 years, working in different capacities in media businesses, buying and selling against these types of audiences in creative rappers, with rappers. Creative rappers with rappers, and other people too. But if you think about it in that type of a way, I think that what we're trying to do is now provide the knowledge of the data and the insights. And, once again, I get to have discussions with people who had no idea that they could like sell their own content, which if any creator or publisher or brand is listening right now, you can go on Facebook and take your 1 million fans and go and tell somebody that they're worth $100,000 or however much you want to decide that they're worth, or you can come and talk to Delmondo and we'll help you tell you how much they're worth. And you can say, great, I'll make 5 videos for you. You got to pay me $100,000, and you don't have to pay Facebook a dime. You don't have to pay them anything. You have to tag the brand. You have to follow the rules that the government says, but then you can go and sell and collect that money without repercussion, pretty much without limit. Don't kill anybody on your stream. Don't abuse people. Don't do weird stuff. Like, that's about it. You know what I mean? And, and that blows people's mind because they don't think that you can, and they say that you can. And even I tweeted about this yesterday because it's like the number one thing when you look at this whole big Facebook did a big creator announcement, which is awesome. It's super exciting for the creators because Facebook is an untapped gold mine for creators. The number one thing that they said for what you can do to monetize, because I know everybody's, thinking about YouTube and talking about YouTube dollars, and everybody's got YouTube dollars. But that's off. But like, you can go to anybody without even a middleman and just say, boom, I set my own price, pay me this and I'll do it. And that's it. And just walk away, make the content, give them a report, and put that money in your pocket and, go buy your girlfriend a nice dinner. So, that I think blows people's minds. And so that is what I'm more excited to do today, because the hard part is once you realize that, I think a lot of people have really cool ideas. And then I think the hard part is then saying, okay, cool. Well, now how do I actually get more than $500? So it's, because ultimately everybody's got a business. And if you have 1 million fans and you're making that type of a video, it's not free to do that type of stuff. So not only do you need to cover your costs, but you need to make a good profit that you can, deliver. You also can't water down your audience at some level too, but on the flip side, the audience is no good unless you're getting anything back from them. And so all of these people also that spend a lot of time and energy on YouTube and Facebook that are sites that you don't own anyways, and you can never really 100% own all of your own fan data. If you're going to do that, you might as well get as much money back from these platforms as you can. And so I think that once people come up with the realization that they can just go out and make money, or they work with, whether it's, influencer agencies or company, there's obviously lots of different ways for, I think that some creators can go and find opportunities, many, many much more better and legit than others. Once you find that, you still need to know how to package it up yourselves. And this is effectively what media companies have done for the past 100 years in very well-defined sales organizations. And that is ultimately like the big divide now is, can you understand the value of your content and audience to a person that also will give you, the comparable value that you feel that you're entitled to. And that's different for anybody. And there's no real way to say what's the going rate for an Instagram post or this or that, because, there's so many other intangibles that are always changing, and everybody would always like to get as much money from every transaction as they can. But yeah, so you need to know how to actually get to that point. And so we do that through the software. And then obviously for our clients, everybody has some strategy or consulting, or, for influencers, I think we have a free product as well. So people can just log in and get some of their analytics for free, or get a quick report and evaluation, especially independent creators. They pretty much can just hit us up and we'll do a lot with the creators themselves. And then all these other media organizations or influencer companies or MCNs and all these other people that want to build a networked model, then obviously we're going in and teaching them how to build those packages, but it's all informed by our software platform.
So do you pair creators and brands at all?
I hate that terminology. Well,
feel free to correct it.
We do pair creators with brands, but that conjures up a process of sending lists and lists and lists and lists. The way that we try to do it today is we like to think of it more of a branded content marketplace opportunity. So there are influencer networks and software out there that you could pay and go get a list of 100,000 influencers and use different tools to map your audience. There's a lot of other people that want to zip it all up in a nice, neat, hey, send them a brief, send them a this. So we're really just focused on being the best, essentially the best and most robust set of authenticated social and video data that we can get. And it's powered by a lot of different types of apps. So, for the most part, a brand doesn't come to us because they want access to a list of influencers at all. But a brand comes to us with a list of 1,000 influencers that they're going to be activating in the next 12 months. And they want to be able to monitor and track them and then ultimately activate all of those too. kind of on like the one-off side, we definitely I would say we have a VIP circle where there's opportunities of whether they're like publishers or sports teams or really, really high quality social influencers or musicians that we work with. And so that's there's like this smaller that I would call like that VIP circle where we're always kind of like keeping our eye open for opportunities for them. And so ultimately, like when brands reach out to us and they say, hey, we're looking for this, can you match us with an influencer? We, at the first level, we think that there's like a really great group of people that are awesome creators that have a unique point of view, but also have kind of like existing projects in the can that we can think about kind of, selling against, like sponsorship series or activations that are more high touch. So we don't really focus on kind of like the core influencer, hey, we need 10 influencers for this activation. But all of our clients are measuring that type of activation in our platform.
Have you noticed any data on the effectiveness of micro-influencers?
I mean, I don't know. I think that I haven't seen a lot of. I don't have any like strong thoughts about like a data or a number point off the top of my head. I'm just gonna say in general, I think I have a good idea that there's like micro influencers for a lot of there's people that can reach different people at all different levels, and depending on what you're trying to spend and the impact you're trying to get back from that, how big or how small can be a factor of that. So if you don't have a lot of money or you're in a really, really small market and, micro influencer works great. My mom, I always say this is my best micro influencer example. I taught my mom how to blog, which is great. She got into it, then she didn't get into it as much anymore. So she liked it for a little bit and then gave it up. But when for the 4 months that she was doing it, she was able to go out and all of it, because she was actually a nursery school. She's a nursery school teacher. And so she had this blog, and actually I think it's a popular blogging network, Macaroni Kid. I think that they do some like parenting. It's like a blog network to help, other like parenting people that want to, write about parenting stuff. And so I don't know, my mom just started like writing about local things, and all of a sudden somebody told somebody who told somebody. She didn't have that many people on her site. It was not like we're lighting the world on fire. Maybe on a good day you might get 50 page views, right? We're talking very small numbers, but it was all of her friends and people in the community that's basically going on to this like little the nursery school teachers blog. And she had a farmer who lives in, outside of Syracuse, where, we have a lot of farms outside of Syracuse, and believe it or not, a lot of green, a lot of farming, a lot of growing. And Wegmans isn't the best grocery store just because, for no reason. We got great farms. And so this farmer reached out to my mom and basically was like, hey, would you be willing to like post about my blueberry picking, because he had a lot of extra blueberries this year apparently, and he gave my mom a bunch of free blueberries. Like a bunch of free blueberries is literally like probably 5 bushels of like a lot of blueberries, and my mom had like not, when I say she posted about it, it's a cross between a very well defined kind of mommy blogger post and a somewhat of like a mediocre Instagram influencer. So my mom would probably laugh if I tell her the story. But the coolest thing was though, she wrote like a little something about how she likes blueberry picking, how she liked the farm, and which is true because she did. I remember going to that farm as a kid many times. And sure enough, this farmer called her up about 5 days later, and he was like, I sold out of all of my blueberries, and I had about 12 people tell me that they read your post. And I was like, get the hell out of here. And so that's my micro influencer story. So that's not to say that it couldn't make a major impact. But I'd say like general market brands, I'm always trying to go with more premium tier because I just think quality is super important. And even if it's authenticity and it's raw, if it's somebody that's a very known for a quality level of creativity and content, I don't know. So I'm always striving for large numbers, but once again, it's not. I look for large numbers because I have a built-in quality filter, which probably other people don't. And so when I say that, to me, it's like, well, of course, I'm going to look for the biggest possible people that are also going to deliver the most valuable and that are going to do the best job and all these other attributes. So I always strive for the best. But like I said, there's a lot of my moms out there that probably can sell a lot of blueberries.
So then what goes into your quality assessment? It's not just numbers. How do you assess quality?
Oh man. Well, I mean, there's some really easy ways, but there's some gut checks that it's like, feels like creativity, feels good, feels about like this way or that way. Just the way that they, kind of conduct themselves, how the content gets put out there, some of the design and style of it, just some of these like weird little nuances. And some people I know are really raw. So I know that is not necessarily the right scale for everybody. But now obviously, because we have this really great software, and what we built is there's obviously a lot of little tells that data can tell us about how accurate a person is or how useful they are. On Facebook, if you authenticate into Delmondo and you're tracking your metrics, we also can tell you how many repeat viewers you get on your videos, which is something that's really, really interesting. And we can tell you where these viewers are coming from. So we've certainly had really cool, people or whether they're like purported large media companies or big Facebook publishers or big influencers, and you run, our report, which does not tell you like the same thing that like the Facebook backend tells you. You run our report and it's like, oh, 3/4 of your audience is actually in Manila. So those 10 million video views that I'm gonna get when I work with you are basically just from like a farm somewhere, or honestly, even if they're real, I don't need to reach 9 million people in Manila. Maybe I need to reach like 9 people because I am in New York City and I need to reach this type of audience. And so we've kind of built those tools that do help to like filter out and weed out that bum traffic that kind of plagues a lot of these social sites as well. And it really helps. So that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at more now, and also evaluating like the amount of branded content that they're doing, the types of content, the quality of the comments and engagements, I think are really important. You know what I mean? Is this like a cesspool of trolls and, nasty stuff that no matter how good that person is, if they got really, really terrible audiences that are saying horrible things, well, then you can imagine that if you're going to put your brand up on that channel, that they're going to have a comment on that too. And so that's something that people have to be considerate of. So today, but once again, I always look through the lens of the same way that I think like people that are scouting for great musicians or great athletes or others are looking for is there's definitely like some intangibles, there's some attitude things, some behavior things that I think about. Humility, that type of stuff. Anybody that I work with, I try to talk with them on the phone. If I'm gonna basically like promote them in any way, if I'm going to say like, hey, I'm going to say that this person is the person doing the right thing, or if I go and take a person to a brand, for the most part, even if we put your name, on a list and send it over for a recommendation, if we have to do the pair a brand with an influencer type of an approach, like I'm not going to send you a person that I don't think is going to reflect well on me, you know what I mean? Because I'm that person who sent you that name. And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, even the person that's an agency that is buying on behalf of their brand should think about like, would I want my name to be attached to this recommendation that I'm making back to my client?
Are you still needing to sell brands on the idea of influencer marketing?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that we need to. I think that people understand that they can reach a higher audience at a lower cost of media than oftentimes working with the very few established media properties, right? Like I can work with 100. I can only work with Fox Sports once a year, but I can work with 100 sports influencers throughout the whole year, right? And so I think that there's something to be said for that because you get more options. And more people than ever before, I think, are also just understanding that more people want to see content from influencers than they probably want to see from the brand. So a better chance to be seen is to work with those influencers. Kind of, why fight them? Want to join them? If you can't beat them, join them type of mentality. But I don't think it's like if you can't beat them, join them. I think that people are genuinely understanding that there's an opportunity.
So do you think the influencers are still undervalued?
I think that the right influencers are undervalued. I think that the wrong influencers are overvalued.
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah. That's a tweet.
Yeah, no, save that one.
Oh, gotta put that one in. Put that in the drafts.
So I have to talk to you.
That's going to be, this is like the quote card for this episode when it comes out.
It is. I'm going to save that one.
Yes.
So So I have to talk to you about Snapchat. Snapchat has revolutionized the way people look at video. Everything is vertical video now in a lot of spaces. We were talking right before this. What makes for a good vertical video?
Oh, I have, kind of like a 3 A's approach to it. It's action, authenticity, and access. So action is, it's got to be, it's got to have, you can't just do like one. I guess action means like short, bursty type content. Obviously, stories, on Instagram, I think you can go up to 15 seconds on Snapchat. I think now you can break it up, but it's still like, under 15 seconds at a time for most of these story type platforms. And so good vertical video in a stories format that's like a 24-hour rotating, like an Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat story type format should have a lot of action that people are going to want to, because you have a tendency to skip through things. And so in the absence of people skipping through your story, keep it moving, keep it going. Don't stick on there. And then also action meaning like strong personalities and strong voices as well. The second is authenticity. So I kind of mentioned before, but the strong personality part also means a voice and an identity. So I really hate when I see a lot of brands that will just like snap like a, hey, this is a heads up shot of a cool purse and pattern and this laid out. And then we're like, today's Tuesday. And I think there's probably some neat stuff, but I'm a personality driven person. And I believe the best story driven content has a voice and a face attached to that. And so that's what I would say that the authenticity means in this instance. And if you can't do that yourself, like if you don't think that you got the chops internally, that's why stories are so awesome to work with influencers, because like takeovers are super easy to run. They're highly effective. Obviously now, because Delmondo has data, we can get way more data than we ever have been able to before, especially on Instagram stories. And it's obviously got a built-in audience, because you get that influencer to shout you out and you get to grow your audience. And so I think that if people can't make their own strong voice and identity themselves, or they're nervous or they're incapable, that they shouldn't be afraid to work with influencers or endorsers or celebrities or that type of instance, because takeovers are so awesome. So that's that authenticity piece of it. And then the last piece is access. So if you have access to things that nobody else does because you're paying money or because you are who you are, or you do certain types of things, show that off. And I know that seems like a pretty standard social content tenet, but in the day-to-day, I almost feel like your content strategies a little bit are, on a story format is a little bit different, because we're almost like voyeurs in the story, right? We open up a window for a couple seconds and we swipe it off, and we expect it to be a 24-hour window. So, if you're that person that's paying all that money to sponsor the Grammys, like, you got tickets. Somebody bigwig from your organization is probably doing all this really, really cool shit and posting it on their Instagram. Like, why aren't they take over your account or show some of that? Or, if you're the title sponsor of a sporting event, go down to the court level, just show something that you can't do. Or you're working with a celebrity, get them on your Instagram story when they're shooting that commercial for you, and just shout out and say what's up. And so I think that access and bringing people to things that you can do that they can't do normally is that third key.
So Facebook has been super open with you guys. Why do you think Snapchat has been so reluctant to give out analytics generally and kind of embrace the creator wave?
I think it's because they originally started off as really wanting to be this idea of friends only, like revenue off of a user and make money because you want to share all this stuff with your friends. And I think that what they never factored in, or they undervalued, was the fact that friends only make up a small portion of somebody's, content consumption on the internet, one. And two, there's only, I don't know if there's like a rule or a law, I'm sure that there is, but I think that there's probably a rule that there's probably only like the top 5%, if even, of somebody's active social friends are like creators, right? And I'm sure that there's somebody who's done some really good research on this, but I mean, I feel like in the same instance where somebody, I saw one the other day where it's like the top 1% of YouTubers generate like 80% of the views or something like that. It's the same type of thing, right? Any individual there's a very smaller of a percentage of their overall friend circle that is an active creator that's going to keep them engaged the same amount of time that people want to have. And Facebook wins because they've done it for so long and they have so many deep-seated connections that, if the average person has 500 friends on Facebook or even 100 friends on Facebook, they can come up with so many different permutations and combinations that can surface elements that every day feels like a fresh story, even if it's the same people. And so I think that Snapchat, one, they didn't think about that. And two, they didn't consider the fact that they need to have premium brands and publishers and influencers seeding all these platforms. And I don't know if they thought about that or not. I mean, I'm sure that they did, and maybe they just discredit it. I know that I've had meetings with Snapchat and I've had very pointed discussions with them, very heated discussions with them at sometimes where it's like, you don't understand that the brand will not spend any money because they have no idea what their content can even look like on that platform, and I've had meetings where I'm like, we had P&G pay us money, Mike Placco, to pay, P&G paid us money to have Mike Placco fucking doodle in the shower and sing. And we came up with this idea of like singing in the shower and drawing goofy hairstyles as if you were like, with bubbles in your hair, right? Like you would sing in the shower. And so we doodled all of that. And then he sang into a Head and Shoulders bottle. And that was like, that was it. He posted it on his account because we wanted to see, wanted to show them there was a number like, hey, this gets seen by people. But, ultimately they just wanted to know what the hell would our brand look like in this version. And so Snapchat never they never were willing to like take that level and listen to that. And then the other flip side is that they just totally discredited the fact that so many people love celebrities and influencers and athletes and this other stuff. And I think that they are just, they just got it wrong, and we'll see if they change.
I was going to ask, do you know if they are changing? I know that they've, after the Q3 stuff came out, I think I've heard about them switching possibly to an algorithm or, maybe embracing creators now. I don't really know what they can do at this point.
There's no way that they're not. They're going to keep doing Snapchatty things that make them a very much like a WeChat messaging type platform, which I still think is a really strong core value. But I think that they're gonna open it up and figure out other ways. They're, servicing your friends' content and just sorting it all is not the way to do it. And even Evan said the other day, like, oh, we can figure out ways we could do premium content and surface it in there. It's like, yeah, dude, no, you're a smart guy, and I'm, no disrespect, but like, duh, fucking Facebook, the thing that Facebook did that was way smarter than what you did is that Facebook let people do it for free and just do it yourselves. And then they said, okay, cool. Now do you want to reach more people? Pay us. Great. We're giving you this free thing, and we're going to let a little bit of your stuff inside of there, but we're going to let just enough of the good stuff trickle in so that people are coming back every day. But you who are trickling in that good stuff, that doesn't mean that you get to take over. And so that's the thing that Facebook got to learn. Now, granted, they didn't know this going into it. Like, I don't think that when somebody said, let's make a brand, make a page, that was like they had the 10-year vision in the same type of a way. But they definitely had the vision where it's like, well, we can charge people to run ads and that's all we can do. But then what's the difference between us and Yahoo? Except we let people, it's like you can advertise around what other people are saying to each other. That's cool, but then it's like advertising the telephone line, or it's all these. So I think that they had the foresight to say, why don't we let people make non-personal pages that might be able to talk about things that they're interested in, and those things may be brands, and maybe official brands want to make their own stuff, and maybe official people and musicians and all these other things, because they don't have a graph of friends of data that has history and real personal stuff together. And once again, Evan, like, you missed that one, bro.
So what do you tell brands who want to ditch Snapchat at this point?
If you're going to ditch Snapchat, ditch it for Instagram stories. that's phenomenal. But I would also say that it depends on, like, ditching Snapchat is a relative term. So if you're looking to reach a younger audience, like if you're trying to hit a core consumer and it's very important for you to touch anybody 23 or under, you got to be on Snapchat 100%, because there's still a huge chunk of pretty active and engaged daily users that you can reach with paid media that we do know use the app every day, that are of an age range that you can't reach in other places organically. So, you can't quit your Snapchat account today and turn on an Instagram stories account and replace that audience one for one. They're different. It's good. You know, the Instagram is already older, not older, but older to a point where it's a generalized audience where, you know what I mean? If you're thinking that I'm going to be able to turn off my Snapchat because I want to hit 13 to 17 year olds and go to Instagram to do it, I feel like my gut and the data is telling me that you're going to probably be a little bit better in the Snapchat world with the targeting capabilities that they can do now with, you know, working with influencers and all that other stuff. I think that, you know, 23 and under, Snapchat is still the place to be.
So are they actually watching the ads? Because I'm always skipping ads.
It's not about ads. It's about influencers, and it's about live events. It's about, you know, co-creating. So more brands today could actually like not even just buy ads, but, you know, do geofilters and then get influencers to create content with those geofilters and have everybody using them. So I think that there's other ways around it. I don't know. The ads, obviously, I don't think that people are spending a ton of time on the ads, but I think that there are ways that more interesting ads can be made. And, you know, they have a self-service tool now. So people are going to go in and they're just going to upload a random video. They're not going to really think about that. You know, we created the first sequential Snap ad. And when we walked into Snapchat for Mike's Hard Lemonade and said, hey, we want to take this ad buy that the you know, media agency that hired us did. And they're like, we want to make sure that you only ever serve our ads 1, 2, 3. They're like, what? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, just like there's a Snapchat story for this Discover in this live story that we're in, I don't want anybody to see the same. I don't want anybody to see this ad number 1 anytime after this. I want them always to see this first ad, and then I want them to see the second ad, then I want them to see the third ad. And they said no, and we had to push hard back. And ultimately, it was the most successful Snap ad that they had ever run until that point. And they pretty much jacked our idea and turned it into a product called sequential Snap ads. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But like, we came up with that idea because we just said, hey, we're going to take a story, which we had, you know, Steph Barkley and Jason Nash, and we had a great, you know, writing crew that we wrote a real like skit, like, you know, 30-second skit, broke it up and ended up doing some, you know, ended up being full 30 seconds because we realized that we could keep our ads short and actually tell a more impactful story and lure people in. And we had such a great additive watch time that Snapchat told us that more people were watching longer as they went through. And I'm like, yeah, that's what the whole goal was. And I'm so glad that works like this. And so I'm sure that not enough people are doing that, or they're not taking that element of their media buys. And that's just because, you know, not every platform can support that or can scale it. Or obviously if you're a small business, that's harder to do. So I don't know. There's a lot of ways, and it's not just about ads. I would say that if you're going to spend money, you know, on Snapchat and you want your content to be seen, spend it obviously on influencers. That's for sure.
So if you're trying to reach the 13 to 17-year-old set, it's Snapchat, and is it Musical.ly? What other platforms would reach that demo right now?
I don't know Musical.ly's current, like, you know, active users. I got, you know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of people there, and it's a very good choice as an option, right? You have, you know, I think that if you're in that younger kid space, you know, you could dabble in a little bit. I do think that it's a hard market to get into with some of these younger apps because kids are very, you know, kids are fickle and they'll switch from the next hot thing to the next hot thing. And so I think that the advertisers and, you know, people have to think about it in the same way. That's why ultimately I do think that influencers are really good, especially when you start to get into experimental bets. Because if I don't know enough about the audience, if I'm Pepsi, right, and I know that I got to be reaching 13 to 17-year-olds constantly, regardless. If one year there's this thing called Musical.ly that kids are, you know, making music videos of themselves, and then, you know, the next year it's Snapchat where kids are making, you know, AR masks of themselves or little 3D models and making themselves do spins. You know, sometimes I can predict those, sometimes I can't predict those, but they're less reliable than people's longer term adult habits and behaviors where we can actually gather long-term data on them. Because obviously, like, as a kid, not every kid is who he's going to be at 13 to 17 years old, right? And that's the whole idea, is like, you just got to kind of buy into those types of fads if that's what it's going to be, or go with, like, you know, more wholesome cause marketing that is good stuff that you could talk to younger kids about that's not going to rot their brains. So you pretty much only have one or two options. And so I do think that in the absence of trying to spend a lot of money every year and jumping from platform to platform, you could just be working with the hottest influencers, as we see a lot of these brands do. They just go in and they'll be the first person to do the big campaign on Musical.ly, the first person to do the big Snapchat thing. And then they get out and then like, boom, we did Snapchat. We don't need, any other brand that comes after us. People are going to just be like, oh, Pepsi did that, oh, yeah, but Pepsi put a snap code on every bottle over the summer that year. Remember that? You know what I mean? So ultimately, I think that you can go in and hit it hard, and then influencers are the best way because it's literally no overhead for a brand to create a presence. If you're working with an influencer, it takes you time to evaluate them, but then ultimately it's no overhead. So I think that's very useful.
Which brands would you say are doing influencer marketing the right way?
Oh man, this is a tough question. It means, it's hard. I do like though, and I know that, let's just say dark horse candidate for influencer campaign of the year, Apple and iPhone X. It's going to be, how about like tweet an unpopular opinion? How about Apple's iPhone X campaign may be, the most surprising influencer campaign of the year, where I just don't think that people would have expected Apple to have done what they did. And I thought it was really smart. So there's a lot of really neat things that I think people do out there. But that one to me was like, you wouldn't have thought that they would have done that before. That's pretty cool. And everybody talked about it. And everybody talked about how big of a deal it was. And then they got all, it was multi-tier because then all of the media talked about it. And then the media business people talked about it. And then the teeny bopper mags talked about it. And then their, fan thing. It was pretty cool. So I think that is, I think that it's obviously an unpopular answer because it's easy to say that Apple does good stuff, but from a strategic point of view, I think that made people say, wouldn't have expected you to do that. And so I think I got to give props to that. There are a lot of cool people that do different types of things. I'm trying to get more, I'm a big fisherman, hiker. I want to, buy a house in the woods and, build a house. And I'm trying to get more and find more of my outdoor product brands and look into that. And there's a ton of stuff that kind of happens there in a whole nother world. So, as I've been looking for, more and more earthy type accounts and things to follow, going back and following some of my favorite fishing brands, for example, I've been seeing that they're doing some really cool stuff. And that's almost like a constant, it's an always on type of an idea, especially some of these fringe or niche industries that are almost self-sustaining, right? Like fishing, outdoors, kayaking, camping, RVing. These industries don't necessarily have large media outlets that people are reporting on. And so they do have to self-sustain with these small pockets of influencers that, that essentially keep that discussion going with a really, really cool thing. Or, very focused, topic that not everybody might be super interested in.
So what do you think the secret to influence is?
I think that it is creating and providing value without ever expectation of anything in return. And I think that is the secret to unlocking it.
So what have you seen brands doing wrong in the influencer space?
I think that what brands are doing wrong is not letting the influencers. Well, two things. One is they're not spending enough time and money on the activations that they're often running. So I would prefer to see, more brands, as I like to call it, the old time radio model of social native advertising, where I love, obviously, told you when I got on here, I love podcasts, and just getting to talking to the microphone is exciting. So that's probably why I'm so long-winded in some of these, because I enjoy it. But old time radio was always underwritten by, one or two presenting brands. And they give you this really, really awesome show and many classic pieces, of creative and writing and music, and were all underwritten by brands. And it was very hands off, but you knew that this is Parquet margarine, or this is, blah, blah, blah brand. This is, Borax or Tide soap or whatever they did. And they got in, they got out, they come in the middle, they get in, they got out, but then they underwrit the program that was underneath it. There was no, stopping every 5 seconds for another commercial and then another commercial. And when we are already, pained by interruption because of the way that
that media is consumed digitally now on our phones and our devices, why do we need to keep forcing more and more interruptions when the content is already kind of short enough as it is? You know what I mean? It's hard enough to get somebody's attention for a little bit amount of time. So why do we have to then force another thing in the middle? So I definitely think that brands could be doing more underwriting of content and aligning themselves with more like-minded content, which I know, like, you know, I got a chance to interview Amy Emmerich, who I think is like chief creative officer, chief content officer. I hope I don't get it wrong, but one of those at Refinery 29. And she had some like amazing stories about how like a brand came in and they wanted to do this and sponsor their series, but they're like, nah, we don't want you to do that. Like, how about we just take that money and use it to fund making the real series that we want to make, and then we'll just like make you a whole nother series that you can, you know, run against our series, but we're just going to make that for you so you don't mess up our series. You know, I don't know if she would describe it as mess up, but essentially it was like, give us the money, underwrite the program, get out of the way, and we'll still make you some really awesome content custom to you and your message with all of the talent and the production team that is actually making this exact piece of content. And then we'll make sure that obviously that is seen right next to this content, but like, don't fuck with our shit. And so I kind of like that. And I loved this story. And I feel the same way, where it's like, you know, Facebook Live, all these publishers are like, how do we make money in Facebook Live? Well, I see this all the time. There's no reason that every publisher shouldn't have, if they're going to be going live on Facebook, yes, it may be hard to sponsor the sporadic and the spontaneous lives that you're doing. But if you're doing a college football show, if you're doing a news update, a politics thing, if you want, you know, most of these people have these formats because they know that they got to do something creative, but yet they're not going and saying like, oh, this is like the, you know, the radio hour, the, you know, Tide radio hour or whatever. So come on in and so to me, there's wide open inventory right now that we're just giving away. If you're a publisher or a creator, you're giving away that money to the platform, although they're obviously giving you a lot of value back. But like ultimately, that's free money that you're losing out on the table, that you're doing stuff there anyways. And so, and then I think the brand on the flip side, if they're not thinking about that, they should be looking for those opportunities. And they should be like, hey, you're a pretty popular Facebook page. You guys go live like every day. Do you guys need a sponsor? Hey, we'd love to do that. So I think that brands need to look for opportunities more and come to the table with more non-advertorial always concepts that are like, hey, well, we would want to plug that in, which is tough though, because, you know, we bring ideas to brands all the time like that. And then we, you know, I know that we get hit with quite like, oh, I don't have any budget for that. I have a budget for this. And so obviously you're like strapped to timelines and the way corporations work. So I get that, but maybe if there was more flex budgets that could be assigned to these types of cool ideas, maybe it wouldn't be so hard to have brands go out and like make their own luck.
Well, thank you so much for all of your time. You gave so many great points. Where can people find you and find out about Delmondo?
Yes, you can add me on any of the social platforms, but I would say I've stopped Snapchatting regularly. So, you know, you can add me on Snapchat, but I'm only there to see other people's stuff these days. I'm on Instagram, Instagram stories, and Twitter. Twitter is where I spend my most time, I guess, Twitter and Instagram. Just Nick Cicero, all one word. And you can follow Delmondo on Twitter, Twitter at Delmondo, or just go to our website, delmondo.com, DELMONDO. Our Instagram and Facebook are weird because somebody else has Delmondo. So it's delmondo.co. So facebook.com/delmondo.co and instagram.com/delmondo.co. Yeah, and just in general, say hi. If you listen to this and you liked anything that I said, you didn't like anything that I said, you definitely can tweet me and I will respond back to you. So,
well, thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And awesome. Once again, congrats to you on getting this up and running. I've loved seeing some of the posts already and the people that you have been talking to. And I can't wait to see where this goes. I mean, definitely you are somebody that is very well traveled. So I can't wait to hear the types of discussions that you're going to get yourself into.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to Beyond Influential. If you found value in this week's episode, please rate and subscribe on iTunes. I'd love to know who you find influential. You can let me know on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Brittany Crystal, KRYSTLE, or visit my website, brittanycrystal.com.
Beyond Influential.